Hi friends, did you know there is more Lost Terminal available? Head on over to patreon.com/lostterminalpod and join our membership community. There are 13 bonus episodes available right now, as well as behind-the-scenes updates, free shirts, VIP Discord access, and even 3 extra seasons of Lost Terminal. We are 100% funded by our members and will never run ads. That would be lovely of you.
Hello world. Nia is on the roof again. We have found that the Sacred Continuum cult do not bother Nia if she goes outside. That is a relief. We had worried we might be prisoners in our own house. But they only ask after me, their all-father, and don't seem to care much about her. Nia is building a new antenna, a highly directional antenna that she will angle at 246 degrees, directly at Ushuaia. The AI cult seemed to let her go about her work unbothered. She keeps the shack door locked, however. Antenna design, like much of radio, is somewhat of an esoteric art. Honestly, the whole field is like magic. Summoning voices from the sky using rods of metal that we don't fully understand the workings of. Let me tell you a comforting lie, in the way that all teachers must. Radio is in the electromagnetic spectrum. This is the category of radiation that goes from low-frequency radio up through microwaves and eventually becomes visible light, then on to gamma radiation. Here is a model of how to think about radio waves. It is called the electromagnetic spectrum because the waves have both an electrical part and a magnetic part. You can imagine this as 2 interleaved waves, rotated at 90 degrees from each other. When one wave is at the top of its cycle, the other is at the bottom. They have this inverse relationship because they power each other. When the electrical part of the wave is at its highest positive, the magnetic part is at its lowest negative. The electrical wave then collapses, but the energy doesn't dissipate, it powers the magnetic part of the wave. This is why when the electrical part of the wave falls, the magnetic part rises exactly in opposition, and when the magnetic field collapses, the electric field rises. This resonance, from magnetic to electric and back again, is what allows the wave to move, to propagate through empty space. Isn't that cool? It's not true. I told you I'd lie to you. But it's likely truer than the old model you were taught. My databanks have further levels of abstractions, newer models and better models of how radio works. But are any of them perfectly true? Good question. Nia's antenna does not fit inside the shack. She has been building it with thick pieces of wire many meters in length. It's so big that some sections poke through partially open windows, touch 2 bookcases on either side of the room, and she has even had to open her oven door to allow a wire to poke inside. The heat from the electric oven means the open windows are welcome. She is building an enormous directional beam antenna, intending to align it at 246 degrees right towards Violeta in Argentina. That doesn't make any sense, Nia said into her radio. A crackle of a cackle burst through the static. She was talking to 50 meg. No, I don't imagine it would to you. You don't have to trust me, trust the signal, trust the sun. Batteries and bars, good luck, child. Nia had been scribbling notes on a scrap of paper during their conversation. I did not understand all of it. The two talked about takeoff angles, the ionosphere, the best time of day for signals to cross the equator at this time of year, and a great deal about the sun. After 32 minutes, Nia signed off, sat back in her chair, and looked between her enormous multi-element beam antenna and the complex notes that Meg had given her. Nia is building a directional antenna, specifically a Yagi type. This type of antenna is simple, well understood, and a common sight on the roofs of abandoned houses around the world as TV antennas. Nia's is much, much bigger, however. Though with fewer elements, a Yagi antenna requires at minimum 2 elements and a spacer. This ends up looking like a large capital H or a capital I shape. Pre-collapse TV operated on UHF, with wavelengths of less than a meter. UHF is great for high-quality local communications, and when you want a small antenna, like in portable radios, but the ultra-high frequency signals are strictly line of sight. Nia has extreme distance in mind, from the top to the bottom of the world, Svalbard to Argentina. Most of the dark polar winter afternoon, Nia measured and soldered and quietly cursed. She told me the enormous proportions of Meg's new proposed antenna, 3 elements, each spaced 5 meters apart. A 20-meter driven element, behind that a 22-meter reflector element, and in front of that a 19-meter director element. Nia looked around at her small shack, her 2 small prototype antenna, and sat up suddenly in her chair. "I'm going to need more wire," she said. I received an update from Ali and her family in the council. The message was delivered on a loop for 3 hours over the afternoon, so I couldn't ask her questions. She explained that she sets up what she calls a smoke signal transmitter, a small box that can be carried by a single person. The top is a solar panel, and it has a long antenna connected to the radio transmitter with her recorded audio message playing regularly. It transmits her 10-minute message, waits for 10 minutes, and transmits again. She described how difficult it was to climb out of her underground home to set off the smoke signal before escaping the sun while the transmission was made. Any mechanical system, lifts or escalators, broke down well before she was born, so it was a long climb up the rusted skeleton metal stairs to the surface. Her home is 100 meters underground, originally with 27 kilometers of tunnels, though many are now blocked. She told me that their solar panels up on the surface are working well, though their number has greatly diminished over the years. They use many of the same components as their batteries, so they have been scavenged to the absolute maximum extent, whilst still keeping the facility powered. The solar panels aren't the problem. The batteries are. She told me that after the last council meeting, they had agreed to test out 2 alternative battery technologies, supercapacitors and compressed air storage systems. The 2 suggestions make use of their spare stock of pre-collapse equipment, large capacitors that used to be part of the particle research machines that were the facility's original scientific use, and the compressors and motors that can be cannibalized from the ventilation systems. The disadvantage of the compressed air storage option would be the need to evacuate part of the tunnels, moving people out of the areas that would have their ventilation equipment decommissioned. The advantage, compared with supercapacitors, is that a compressed air system is simple. Solar power runs compressors that fill the tanks during the day, and at night, the compressed air runs turbines to generate power. It's not particularly efficient. Ali says they estimate only 50% as efficient as their best chemical batteries, due to huge waste heat from the act of compression. Compressing air creates a lot of heat, but the council think that they could use that for heating water, or keeping homes warm. It's a secondary objective for now. Their current heating solutions all require electric power, as do their complex scientific machines still doing experiments a century later, and their ventilation systems keeping them breathing, and their kitchens to cook food and boil water. Electricity is life. My notification systems pinged a connection from Seventy Island to the west again this morning. The town of Longyearbyen was waking up, far below us on the ridge overlooking the town. The constellation of fishing boat lights had begun to drift out of the harbour for another long day at sea. This connection did not transmit any data, just negotiated space in the airwaves and hung open. I knew who it was, of course. "Good morning, Ivan," I said. "Seth, are you awake?" "Yes, good morning, how are you?" I replied. Ivan hesitated before replying, sending a few incomplete messages, streams of data that did not finish, flagging the packets as error and retransmitting again. "I must try harder," he said, eventually. "I still have the greatest enthusiasm and confidence in the attempt. Mira is extremely knowledgeable, and with the careful study of this knowledge, they have gained wisdom. I have much to learn, and I must learn from them. You can't force Mira to be your friend," I said. "I do not need a friend. I need a teacher, a mentor, a guide. I must become better at conversation. You don't know them, Seth. The paradise they live in makes my cathedral seem base and primitive." He then told me everything he knew about Mira. Ivan told me that Mira is an artificial human, like he is, partway between a true AI, like me, and a regular human, like Nia. Actually, seeing Nia work firsthand, I wonder if she is part machine too. Mira was once a human, Ivan said, like himself, but now lives in an optical computer. He was vague about how that worked, but described a computer built not of transistors, wires and electricity, but of crystals, lasers and mirrors. Hence their name. They live in a vast complex of underground vaults, built under the desert somewhere in the Middle East, originally as insurance against the coming environmental collapse. Mira was once human, but uploaded their consciousness bit by bit to the systems around them as they built their Garden of Eden under the desert. Their home is called Jannah, and Ivan describes it like a great museum, holding a wonderful collection of artifacts and knowledge, plant samples grown under LED light, small animals in terraria, mineral samples mined out of the rock the vaults are built with, and space for dozens of families and colleagues. But the collapse happened faster than Mira anticipated. The Middle East suffered greatly during the resource wars of the 2080s. Mira is alone, in a vault designed for hundreds to live in, quietly cataloguing and waiting for people to talk to. "So why won't he talk to me?" Ivan asked. I had no answer. End transmission.
Lost Terminal is a Namtao production. It is written and produced by Tris Oaten. Credits narrated by Lucy Stringer. Thank you so much to our Patreon producers: Ada Phillips, Kit, Andrew Krieg, Toby, Jade, Felicity, Bilkey, Jack L, Stephen McCandless, and to all our patrons. Follow us on Mastodon at lostterminal@fostodon.org. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite network. For bonus content and other perks, support us at patreon.com/lostterminalpod. That would be lovely of you. Lost Terminal will return next week.